Is a weird world we live in where we've never been so connected, yet felt so disconnected, so, dare I say, lonely at times. I don't think that it has to be that way. I believe we've forgotten what it means to be socially skilled, and in this video, I'm going to give you 3 areas that you can focus on for your social health, and I'm going to give you the knowledge and tools to be successful there. I'm Spencer Nix. This is the BPR podcast where we wax poetic about the art of radical health and athlete design. And when we say health, in my mind, it's broken down into 6 areas. There's performance, which we would typically see in a gym. There's psychology, or what's going on in your brain. There's the aspects of sleep. There's the aspects of nutrition. There's the areas of stress management. And then lastly, and this sometimes throws people for a loop, but there's an aspect of health that is social. The research is pretty buttoned up that your life can be enhanced by the social relationships that you maintain. So this is a video where we're going to get into that, and you might be wondering, like, well, what do you know about this? Well, I'm no expert, and I can say that I haven't done a ton of research here, but I do have 16 years of observation. So you could say, in a way, I'm an inadvertent social scientist. I've seen thousands of interactions go down. I've seen thousands of people enter into a space like ours to want to fit in and to be a part of that. So I have some opinions on this and how it can go well for you, and then I have lots of experience on how it doesn't go well for people. And that's what we're going to be breaking down. Now, before we get into the specifics and the ways that I'll go about breaking down social health into 3 different and distinct categories, I believe that there's some big assumptions that happen. There's some limiting beliefs that each one of us potentially are thinking as we talk about social health. One of those big assumptions is that it's genetic. Hey, I'm just not very good at parties. I hear that a lot. Or, I'm just not great in social situations. Heck, I've even said that myself. But the truth is that your ability to interact with other human beings isn't genetic. It's not like eye color. It's not like a widow's peak. This is a skill, and if it's a skill, that means it can be practiced, and if it can be practiced, it means that it can be coached. Secondly, this isn't something that's just going to happen to you, so it's not as easy as, well, I'll just sign up for this gym and everything will work out. There's some active things that you have to do. There's some conscious things that you have to lean into in order for this to go well for you. What I'm mainly referring to is some type of real human interaction. That doesn't mean that it has to be face-to-face, but I'm not getting into the weeds of social media, email, or anything that has a lagging or delayed effect. I'm talking about being able to read in real time what's happening with the other person that you're in conversation with. And then the last thing that I'll say to make sure that we're all on equal footing is that I've seen very few people be flawless at this. Very few people that are batting 1,000 when it comes to socialization. 2 things on that point. Those that come into conversations and seem to be very confident and sure of themselves typically dominate the conversation. To go to an extreme, they can almost be insufferable. So I want to tell you that those that think they're really good at it are probably not as good at it as they could be. And then those that have claimed, I'm just not great here, or I'm an introvert and it takes me a lot of energy to work up to this, I find that those people are much better at this than they give themselves credit for. So let's just all agree that for most of us, we're somewhere in the middle, and that each of us could probably take something from this video and improve upon it. So let's get started. Now, within this category of social health, I like to think of it in 3 distinct domains. There's the depth of communication that you'll have, and therefore the depth of relationships. There's the frequency of these human real-time interactions. And then lastly, it's the supportive communities that we belong to. Those are the 3 areas that we're going to focus on. For me, that's just an easy way to make sense of this because it can be a little overwhelming at times. So let's start with depth. For each one of these things, I find that with clients, it's great to have a question locked and loaded so you can get a beat on where they're at in this particular area of social health. The question that we like to ask is this: hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the depth of your relationships? So I would ask you the same question. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's depth going for you? Do you feel like that you're interacting at a level where people know you and you feel emotionally supported? What's the number? Likert scales are just a way to take something that is subjective in nature and try to make it objective. So whatever your number is, don't obsess with that, but it's a great thing to evaluate for yourself. Now, let's say that we wanted to go a little bit deeper with a few more follow-up questions. We might say, hey, do you have people in your life that you're honest and transparent with? Another great question is, hey, do you have people that you feel like are really supporting you? The answers to those questions for us let us know if this is something that we need to investigate further. But if their answers are sufficient, we say, hey, probably not the thing in limiting supply. Let's move on to something else. Now, if the answer to depth for you is no, hey, this is something that we can improve. Sometimes clients tell me, or at least I get kind of a whiff or an aroma that they're a victim to their circumstances. Like, you know what, as hard as I try, there's nothing I can do. And that's BS. There's lots of things that you can do. And so let's get into some of them. Number one, and this is gonna sound so obvious, but you need to learn good manners when it comes to conversation. It's a mistake when people go into any type of interaction where they think, oh, well, this needs to be like tit for tat. This needs to be equal, and I need to leave here feeling like I got everything out that I needed to say. I believe the opposite is true. I believe that good manners implies that you're going to give more than you take. If you leave a conversation thinking, man, I got everything I needed out of there, you probably dominated it. If you left a conversation saying, man, I hit him with all my zingers and I told all my stories, you had somebody that was constantly listening to you and not talking. So a very, very basic rule of thumb here is to do more listening than you do talking. Now you might say, well, how am I going to achieve the depth that I need? Well, this is something that takes time, but as a general rule, you will be somebody that people want to engage with and want to eventually flip the script and be on the receiving end, but you have to give before you take. If you leave thinking, well, man, that was really therapeutic, I hope you paid him for it. Last thing I'll say on that point is conversations are this social contract where we agree to be more interested than interesting. Connection and depth happen naturally, slowly over time, as we gently reveal and then acknowledge with one another what we're sharing. I've heard this called the vulnerability loop, the Johari window, the concept of emotional contagion, but it goes something like this. It's basically saying symbolically, I understand. That's how we connect with people. It's not just robotically listening. It's saying, hey, you said that to me and I acknowledge what it is that you're saying. Now, it'd be really weird if you just said those words. So we got to be a little more subtle about it. We got to be a little slicker about it. It would go something like this. I would ask, hey, how was your weekend? And you would offer up the smallest insight and vulnerability. You would say something like, you know, it's great. Man, we're having a tough time getting Sally to sleep. Now, I, in response, would first realize what they just did. They offered me up something that I can respond to. And this is how I would do it. Man, I know what you mean. That's good enough. I could go on to then meet them at that level of vulnerability. You know, our kids were that age, you just feel like a zombie. That's a way of me saying, I understand. And also, I have something that feels akin to what it is that you're feeling. Now, some of the mistakes that people make is that they feel like if they're vulnerable, it means that they're a weenie. At the other end of the spectrum, people come in and they don't start at a slight level of vulnerability. They come in and they hit you with something that's too heavy. It's too heavy for you to even relate to. I've had conversations where someone tells me something really traumatic, and there's no way that I can be like, yeah, I totally get what you mean on that, because I can't. So this is something that takes time. It's slow, it builds, but if you're paying attention, there will be opportunities in a conversation that are not just logistical, but they are emotional. Don't miss that chance to say symbolically, I understand. If you do that, it will go well for you in opportunities to get deeper and deeper and more in sync with what it means to be a human being in this weird existence that we are experiencing. Last thing on the depth of relationships, ask for advice, but rarely give it. Here's what I mean by that. Nothing can get a deep conversation going more quicker than asking for advice. Saying, hey, what's your opinion on this? Or, hey, do you have any experience with this? Or, what would you do if you were me? Is like crack for your conversation partner. It's the dope hit of conversations. It's almost irresistible. So irresistible that you'll want to give unsolicited opinions. Don't. Ironically, nothing can stop a conversation quicker than offering your unsolicited coaching to your conversation partner. So that's depth. Now let's get into frequency. When we talk about frequency of interactions, everybody's different. So a good question to ask yourself or your clients if you're in that role as a coach is, hey, how would I rate, or how would you rate the frequency of quality time spent with others? For some, if depth is there, frequency is independent. Yet for others, it's been our experience that they may need a large amount of both. If this is something that you feel is in limited supply, there's several strategies to increase, and here's a few ideas. One, the easiest way is to treat every human interaction as a chance to connect. I love this. Personally speaking, I have a huge bias towards this. That doesn't mean that you're sharing your childhood trauma with the barista at the coffee shop, but we've coached people to look at every interaction as a chance to ask interesting questions and to be kind. These are simple things I'm talking about. This is calling a waitress by name. This is receiving the parcel like a football from the UPS person, sending messages of encouragement when we think about our loved ones. We found that for those of our clients that have this in limiting supply, they don't feel as alone as they once did when they treat everyone like they're a part of their story. Secondly, we found great success in pairing or partnering adjacent activities with the chance to be social. Now, obviously the low-hanging fruit for me to say would be coupling exercise in a social environment, much like you see in any group training business. Next week, which I'll talk about here at the end of the video, we're gonna get into the specifics of that, how that looks in a gym setting, but also we could say that there's multiple opportunities that you could rope in some type of social component into the things that you're already doing. This could be as simple as calling your college roommate once a week on your weighted ruck outside. This could be inviting a new colleague to run to the coffee stand with you once a week, or ringing up family on your commute to work. Now, lastly, for social health, we think of support. Support refers to our sense of community and inclusion for the greater good or something outside of ourselves. There's been lots of research around this topic that for purpose, for identity, it's important to be a part of a larger community. The question that we ask for our clients and that you can ask yourself right now is, do I feel like I'm already a part of a supportive culture or community? If this is something that you feel like you're lacking, I want to make a big guess as to why you struggle with this. Are you ready? You might say, it's just hard to find a good fit for me. Or, I've tried to go here, but I just don't really fit in. Or you could say, I really put myself out there, but I just don't get anything back in return. Do you know why I say those in a dramatic voice? Because I've said all of those to myself. How could I be so close for you who's watching this that I don't actually know? Well, I think it's because everybody at some point has felt this way. When we're talking about this, we're not saying that it's going to satisfy all our needs for everything that we have. We're saying there's one specific aspect that we are joining this community or culture that we hope to satisfy. Now, this next thing, it's a zinger that I've been saving for just the right moment. And it's this. Are you ready? Successfully socializing is a function of rejection, specifically your willingness to endure it. I'll say it one more time. Success socially is a function of rejection. That means that no club, no church, no social club will be perfect, and it will not solve all your needs, and it will be a iteration and prototype and trial and error until you find the people that you feel like are a part of your unique and special brand as a human being. That's just how it goes. Welcome to being a human. You're not a special snowflake, but you are a unique individual. So when you think about it, how could this group that only has a limited insight into who you are satisfy all your needs? It's impossible. Now, if you've been a part of any type of club or culture, you realize that it's going to be this huge experimentation with meeting people. Within this group, you'll have to meet lots of people. You'll have to give them lots of opportunities to challenge the first impressions that they gave you. If they repeatedly disappoint you, move on. One bit of advice there, and we'll talk about this more next week. It may not be the whole culture that's bad, just maybe a few people that you don't really jive with. Don't discount the whole group because of a few bad apples. You know what I'm saying? The game, one more time, is to keep playing despite failures without losing enthusiasm for the very real and necessary part of your social health. Now, before we sign off, I want you to know two things. This is a broad brushstroke on a topic that I hope we can zoom in and get much more granular in recordings to come. There's no end-all be-all solution, and I just gave you some crumbs of a few tools that we have, but hopefully it's some good launching points and more importantly, some things to think about and how you might apply them in your own life. Secondly, as we mentioned before, this is actually a two-part recording. Here's a fun fact. Over 20 marriages have spawned from people that have met in the gym that I'm a part of. In addition to a social scientist, you could say I'm somewhat of a love doctor, you know what I'm saying? Actually, I didn't have anything to do with those relationships except open the doors and turn the lights on, but I have been able to observe a lot of things in the aspect of romantic relationships. And even though that's a very niche topic, it's something that I think whether you're married, single, or in any type of relationship could be beneficial and potentially educational educational. So I hope that you'll join us for that next week. But in the time being, get out there, be a good conversationalist, give more than you take, and thanks for listening.